Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I recorded a video Wednesday night, but I decided after all the events that have taken place that I needed to do something a little different. So stick with me here, okay? We're going to talk about some of the stuff that's gone on and what we're going to do about it. So first of all, I wanted to start out with this because I entitled this video Hope, because I think right now this is what we need to keep our eyes focused on. And I think this particular statement by the First Lady gives us hope and helps us to remember what things are really important. So let me go through this and then we'll get into some of the other stuff. It was 2 weeks ago when I received the diagnosis that so many Americans across our country and the world had already received. I tested positive for COVID-19. To make matters worse, my husband and our nation's commander-in-chief received the same news. Naturally, my mind went immediately to our son. To our great relief, he tested negative. But again, as so many parents have thought over the past several months, I couldn't help but think, what about tomorrow or the next day? My fear came true when he was tested again, and it came up positive. Luckily, he is a strong teenager and exhibited no symptoms. In one way, I was glad the three of us went through this at the same time, so we could take care of one another and spend time together. He has since tested negative. I was very fortunate as my diagnosis came with minimal symptoms, though they hit me all at once, and it seemed to be a roller coaster of symptoms in the days after. I experienced body aches, a cough and headaches, and felt extremely tired most of the time. I chose to go a more natural route in terms of medicine, opting more for vitamins and healthy food. We had wonderful caretakers around us, and we will be forever grateful for the medical care and professional discretion we received from Dr. Conley and his team. It was an unfamiliar feeling for me to be the patient instead of a person trying to encourage our nation to stay healthy and safe. It was me being taken care of now and getting first-hand experience with all that COVID-19 can do. As the patient and the person benefiting from so much medical support, I found myself even more grateful and in awe of caretakers and first responders everywhere. To the medical staff and the resident staff who have been taking care of our family, thank you doesn't say enough. Recovering from an illness gives you a lot of time to reflect. When my husband was taken to Walter Reed as a precaution, I spent much of my time reflecting on my family. I also thought about the hundreds of thousands of people across our country who have been impacted by this illness that infects people with no discrimination. We are in unprecedented times, and with the election fast approaching, it has been easy to get caught up in so much negative energy. It also cheered me to think of all the people I have met across our country and the world, and the goodness and compassion that exists if you seek it out. Our country has overcome many hardships and much adversity, and it is my hope COVID-19 will be another obstacle we will be able to tell future generations we overcame and learned from in the process. I encourage everyone to continue to live the healthiest life they can. A balanced diet, fresh air, and vitamins really are vital to keep our bodies healthy. For your complete well-being, compassion and humility are just as important in keeping our minds strong. For me personally, the most impactful part of my recovery was the opportunity to reflect on many things: family, friendships, my work, and staying true to who you are. I am happy to report that I have tested negative and hope to resume my duties as soon as I can. Along with this good news, I want people to know that I understand just how fortunate my family is to have received the kind of care that we did. If you are sick, or if you have a loved one who is sick, I am thinking of you and will be thinking of you every day. I pray for our country, and I pray for everyone who is grappling with COVID-19 and any other illnesses or challenges. Thank you to everyone who reached out and offered well wishes and prayers for our family. You remain in ours as well. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I have to admit, folks, I signed in to YouTube this morning with fear and trepidation, okay? I wasn't sure what I was going to find. And the email that my messages go to from YouTube I don't check that often and everything, so I hadn't seen whether there was any message there or not. I am blessed to still be on the air, and I want to take that blessing very seriously. I take it as an opportunity to be able to continue the work, but we're going to have to do it in just a little different fashion. I'm not sure what all it's going to happen here. When you think about it, just imagine having a job and then all of a sudden you don't have the job. I mean, just from one day to the next, you don't know if you're going to still be employed tomorrow. And that's really the situation I'm in, which a lot of people have been through in the past. But this is for totally different reasons. I mean, there's no sense behind it. Well, there is a sense, but it's not the proper one. So I really look at this letter that our First Lady put out as a type of hope that I think we need to pay attention to. And one of the things, I mean, I've been grappling with this morning, and I just been trying to think it through, because there's a lot at stake for me personally. I mean, there's a lot at stake for everyone who's been involved in this. Maybe possibly a little more for me than some, because this really is my job now, and it does make the little extra money that I need to pay my bills each month. So it is, kind of a difficult thing to face. And, you think about it, you think, well, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? Because I want to approach this in a way where I employ the appropriate amount of camouflage. I've tried to do that somewhat from the beginning, although I have been very verbal on some of the videos that I have out there. But we don't need to refer to Mr. 17. This is the whole point. This is what he was talking about. What we need to do instead is we need to talk about the truth and get the truth out there. But even now, at this point, a lot of people are being taken down just because they're telling the truth. And the video that I had today, I did alter, because if I report it, I'm not sure what would happen. So I'm going to find a different way to do that, to get the information out there. Let's just say that a certain article from the New York Post has caused quite a stir. And because of that, and this is kind of a segue into what I'm going to be talking about here, because of what has happened and the censorship that happened because of that article from the New York Post, a lot of people lost accounts. A lot of people are being silenced. And, they silenced the Trump team. They silenced Kayleigh McEnany. They silenced James Woods. It's really sad when this is how they have to play in order to try to win, that they will try to win at any cost. And it's just not, it's not right. We can't play by those rules, and we shouldn't play by those rules. But we do have to still stay in the fight, and that's the important part. So stick with it. And if you pay attention to what our First Lady said here, she focused on other things. It's very important that we maintain our compassion for others, because a lot of people have just, been deceived, and they don't know that they are believing lies. It happens. This is part of our world that we live in. Sometimes good people are misled. They can internalize that so much that they lose their perspective of who they are, as part of humanity. And we need to keep our compassion for others as first and foremost. We're all Americans. It doesn't matter if they're on that side or this side. We still are all Americans. So we need to stand against lies and to stand up for the truth. But we also have to do it with compassion and humility, knowing that by the grace of God, we could go that route too. All of us can be deceived if we're not paying attention. And so it could be us. It could be someone that we love. And we need to remember that we're not in this to destroy people. We're not in this to attack people. We're in this to share the truth. And by sharing the truth, protect those who are vulnerable and to expose the lies that they've been told for so long. So I really do want you to kind of take this into consideration. I think she also pointed out balance, a very important part of things. Yes, balanced diet, fresh air, vitamins, but balance in life. Keeping your focus not on the negativity around you, because there's so much right now. We need to focus instead on the positive, on things that are within our ability to change, and on the good things that we're seeing happening, because there are good things happening. So I don't know what my future holds. I really don't. I kind of am with that Kathy Tricoli song, my life is in God's hands, you know. He's the one that controls what's going to happen with my channel, with, my presence online and everything. So where will I go? What will I do? Just be aware that if anything happens and I suddenly disappear, or at least my channel does, go to my Truthification Chronicles website. And it's just truthificationchronicles.com. Bookmark it. So if anything happens, you can go there. You can find updates. I will make sure that I keep you posted as to what's going on. I'm going to look into Rumble. I did look into it before when it was first mentioned, but at the time, it looked to me like they would pick and choose whose channels they were going to allow. So I don't know if, that is really a reality, a possibility. I am on BitChute, and the BitChute link is in the description of all of my videos. So go down there and get that and make sure you bookmark it. My videos are supposed to transfer over automatically, so they should be there. I just don't go into BitChute very often. So that may change, but I am on Twitter still. I am on Parley or Parler, whichever you want, still. But I just don't have enough time in the day to go to everything. So usually Parley is the one that I don't go to very much. And Facebook, I only get in there a couple times a week, it seems like. So I'm trying, guys. It's just there's more happening than I can keep up with. And I'm trying to focus on the positive. I'm also trying to make sure that I keep a balance in my life too, because if I don't, my body will just crash on me, and I don't want that to happen because there's too much going on right now. Maybe later on in November I'll be able to do that. Take a nice long nap. That would be good. But for now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water, keeping up with everything that's going on. So I'm sorry that I'm not going to actually give you the version that I recorded, but I think I'll still have some things that you might want to see in this one. Anyway, just read through this and pass it on. Let people know. I think it's very positively written, and she did a good job with it, and let people know that they're humans. I mean, even though it's the president and the first lady, they're still humans. They got sick. They didn't feel good, but they made it through. And I think that's an important message to get out there. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that are happening because of what happened with the censorship on Twitter and Facebook yesterday. And likely what will happen with YouTube. I hope that they're going to include that as well. So Josh Hawley, and he's the senator from Missouri, a good guy. He has done really well in the Amy Coney Barrett discussion, the questioning that he's been doing. He definitely helps to give a good perspective on what's going on there. So he's written a letter here to the acting general counsel for the Federal Election Commission. And I want to show that to you. Here's the letter itself. I got it a little bigger so you can see it. And he put this out on the 14th. And he says, "Dear Ms. Stevenson, I write to express serious concern about the possibility that egregious campaign finance violations benefiting the Biden campaign may be playing out in real time, just weeks before the presidential election. Earlier today, the New York Post published a bombshell report that Hunter Biden facilitated a meeting between a Ukrainian energy executive and his father, who was then vice president. The Post article cites evidence that would directly contradict Joe Biden's claims that he has, quote, never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. The Post's reporting has understandably attracted substantial public discussion, and countless Americans have sought to discuss and debate that article via the forums in which so much of our political speech occurs, on social media. But two social media platforms have engaged in unprecedented suppression of public discussion of the article. Twitter is blocking all tweets and direct messages that contain the URL for the Post article. Facebook has stated that it is, quote, reducing the story's distribution on our platform, though the specifics of how Facebook will implement this remain opaque. This conduct does not merely censor the core political speech of ordinary Americans, though it certainly does that. Twitter's and Facebook's conduct also appears to constitute a clear violation of federal campaign finance law. Federal law prohibits any corporation from making a contribution to a federal candidate for office, and there's the U.S. code for that. Twitter and Facebook are both corporations. A contribution includes, quote, anything of value for the purpose of influencing any election for federal office. And there's the code on that. Twitter's and Facebook's active suppression of public speech about the New York Post article appears to constitute contributions under federal law. There can be no serious doubt that the Biden campaign derives extraordinary value from depriving voters access to information that, if true, would link the former vice president to corrupt Ukrainian oligarchs. And this censorship manifestly will influence the presidential election. These possible campaign finance violations by two of the most powerful corporations in America comes only weeks before Election Day. And while millions of Americans are in the midst of voting, I ask that the FEC take immediate action to investigate these potential violations and, if appropriate, take remedial action to prevent further interference with the 2020 presidential election. So, I don't know if the FEC is going to do anything, but there is a ruling in it about donations in kind, meaning they're not financial donations, but they certainly make a definite impact, so they can be considered a type of donation, even though they're not just having money of some kind. And I did a video on that a while back, actually, that they were talking about it because they were trying to accuse the Trump campaign of doing that. Well, Clarence Thomas came out with a statement, ironically, on this very day, on the 13th, and it has to do with Section 230 immunities. And he says that he thinks they're applied too broadly, that there's not a lot of clarity in the particular law, and that Congress really needs to go through and make it stronger by clearing up some of the language, amending it in places. Well, this is where his statement is, and I wanted to show you this. This was a listing of some of the cases that were pending before the Supreme Court, and they list out the orders in pending cases, what they're doing here. And then they go down here, and the writ of certiorari is where the cases, once they're appealed through all the courts, the lower courts, then they can put in a petition for a writ of certiorari, and that has to do with whether the Supreme Court is going to take it or not. Now, the Supreme Court gets a lot of different cases that are petitioning them. They can't obviously take them all as just, a matter of time, because if you've been watching the Amy Coney Barrett hearing, you've noticed that when she talks about the procedure that she goes through, it's very time consuming. I mean, you don't just do that in a few hours. It's something that takes days, weeks, months. It all depends. They'd have to read through everything from all the lower courts. They have to read through all the decisions, all the arguments that have been made. They have to, go through cases that are previously decided to see how this one stacks up to it. And it's just extremely, time consuming. And that's why they have their clerks, because they need their clerks to do a lot of this work for them so they can start compiling it and putting everything together in a fashion that will allow them to make their ruling. Well, anyway, certiorari was granted for this particular case. Well, it's actually 3 different cases, but because they all involve this Arthrex, which I don't know what the cases are, I assume that they're all similar cases, so they kind of lumped them together. And they did grant certiorari for that. But there were a lot of them down here that they denied. I mean, lots of them. You can see them here. And, there's just tons of them. And this one, I came through this one. I actually knew about this one before this. I'd seen it somewhere. Maybe when they were petitioning for certiorari. I don't remember. But this was a guy who had killed 3 people in Indiana. He killed one and he got caught for that one. And then come to find out, he had actually killed 2 more. So he was up for execution, I believe. And he was trying to get off. And it's like, no. So yeah, they didn't even bother. They just, when they deny certiorari, that means that it goes with whatever the lower court decision was. And so in this case, you'll notice here, Richard Blumenthal et al., which is like most of the Democrats, v. Trump. And what they were trying to do with that particular one, it's been going on for years because it started like back in 2017, I think. But they were trying to get him on the emoluments clause. And so that's what that was. The last court that ruled said that they were not going to dismiss it. Well, it went to Emmett Sullivan, and he was supposed to rule whether he was going to dismiss it or not. Well, of course, he didn't dismiss it. He wanted to continue it on, but it ended up, by the time it got done with the 3-panel en banc, it ended up that, yes, they didn't dismiss it, but they ruled that the congressman that brought it did not have standing to bring it. So it was kind of a moot point. So that's where they're leaving it right now. It's not going to be taken up by the Supreme Court, which I thought probably was a good move, and it'll stick with what that ruling was, so it'll be okay. But yeah, Sullivan again, that guy has not been working for us. I think he's going to be facing some things. There's just a lot of them. I mean, seriously, I could go through this. This is like huge. All of these people suing the United States and Barr and, just everything under the sun. But anyway, there's like pages and pages of them. So let's go to page 12 because that's where it starts. So like 10 pages worth of denials. Yeah. So this is a statement by Clarence Thomas because he wanted to weigh in on this particular one right here. Malwarebytes Inc. versus Enigma Software Group. And evidently these 2 organizations were having a little bit of a feud and everything, but it all centered around the Section 230 of the law and of the Communications Decency Act. So this particular section, it's necessary in a lot of ways because of how the internet works. For instance, I want you just to think for a minute of like a book that's being published. Okay, so when a book is published, the publisher goes through a process where they edit it and they make sure that everything in there is supposedly accurate, which is why actual books, usually, nonfiction books, are usually more accurate than articles online or anything like that, or Wikipedia, because Wikipedia, can be changed just at the whim. It can say something totally different. So a book, though, has gone through a process, and the information in there supposedly has been vetted, and the publisher will stand behind that document. Okay? So if there is something that is a lie in there, if there is something that is purposefully put in there to malign someone, then the publisher can be sued, because there's a reasonable expectation that the publisher has done their due diligence on it. Okay? And that's why they're a publisher. Well, then you have, once the book is published, it goes to places like, well, they don't have them so much anymore, but, bookstore or a library or something like that. And so when you go to a bookstore, the bookstore is not a publisher. The bookstore is a distributor. They don't publish the document. They don't edit it. They don't do anything to it. All they do is put it out there so other people can read it, so they can purchase it. And so they just distribute it. That's all they do. They have no way of dealing with the content. They don't manipulate the content in any way. So they're not a publisher. They're a distributor. And the difference between those two positions is very important, because this is part of what Section 230 has to do with when it comes to internet companies. Like, for instance, YouTube has a platform. It has the, program and all the infrastructure needed to put videos on. And so the videos out there use, the content creators use YouTube's software and their facility, their online service, to be able to present our content to all of the viewers. All right? So YouTube is like a distributor. Now, the problem we have is that, especially with what happened yesterday or last night or this morning, I don't know when they actually did it. I just found out about it this morning. But whenever they did that, that's where they really stepped over the line, because they're no longer in the distribution, they're also in the publishing business, because they're determining what is or isn't going to be published. And that's where the real problem comes, and especially with Section 230. And Justice Thomas points this out, because he says here, this petition asks us to interpret a provision commonly called Section 230, a federal law enacted in 1996 that gives internet platforms immunity from some civil and criminal claims. And there's the code for it. When Congress enacted the statute, most of today's major internet platforms did not exist. And in the 24 years since, we have never interpreted this provision. So it's never gone to the Supreme Court, which is kind of interesting. So that means that there's no real case law from the Supreme Court that's going to govern this ruling, or any ruling that lower courts might make. And that makes it very difficult. And it also causes there to be a lot of discrepancy about the different types of rulings that have been made across the spectrum. So he says, but many courts have construed the law broadly to confer sweeping immunity on some of the largest companies in the world. And then it goes down to these cases. But this is the thing that he's really focusing on, the way that this has been construed broadly, giving probably much more immunity than was intended with the original law. Now, like I said, to some degree we need this law, because I agree that YouTube should not be sued for whatever I put, on my channel. They should not be able to be sued for that, because they don't have control over my content other than demonetizing it, which is another way that they are putting on pressure. So this is something that needs to be addressed. And if you go through when he's talking about all this, he says, I agree with the court's decision not to take up this case. I write to explain why, in an appropriate case, we should consider whether the text of this increasingly important statute aligns with the current state of immunity enjoyed by Internet platforms. Enacted at the dawn of the dot-com era, Section 230 contains two subsections that protect computer service providers from some civil and criminal claims. The first is definitional. It states, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. This provision ensures that a company like an email provider can host and transmit third-party content without subjecting itself to the liability that sometimes attaches to the publisher or speaker of unlawful content. The second subsection provides direct immunity from some civil liability. It states that no computer service provider shall be held liable for A, good faith acts to restrict access to or remove certain types of objectionable content, or B, giving consumers tools to filter the same types of content. And this limited protection enables companies to create community guidelines and remove harmful content without worrying about legal reprisal. So technically right now they're able to do that. But the problem is when you look at how broad that is, it is, opening itself up to having some of the problems that we're seeing now. How much, how far can you go? Like Twitter restricting the access of the press secretary of the United States. Is that going to fit within these guidelines, this broad legal immunity? Or is this something that they can be held culpable for? And that's what this is addressing. And I think he's right. He's really not saying that the Supreme Court should be ruling on this. And that's what he said. He agrees that they denied it because it's not the Supreme Court. It is something that Congress really needs to address. Because when this law, I don't know if you know, I got online probably in 1997, 98, somewhere in there. And this was created, that law was created in 1996. And I can tell you, things have changed drastically since then. I mean, everything. It's just so different now than what it was. I remember being in chat rooms and things that you don't do those kinds of things anymore. Instead, you have Twitter and you have YouTube. And I don't even know when YouTube started, but, the videos, they were just a few of them. It seems like there were not very many. And, I was on dial-up at the time, the little dum-dum thingy. And, it was totally different in those days. So things have changed. And I don't think the Section 230 is addressing things adequately. And that's what Justice Thomas is really saying here. He says publishers or speakers were subjected to a higher standard because they exercised editorial control. They could be strictly liable for transmitting illegal content, but distributors were different. They acted as a mere conduit without exercising editorial control, and they often transmitted far more content than they could be expected to review. You can't watch all the videos on YouTube. It's just impossible for them to have enough people to watch them all and to make sure they're all compliant. So that's what they're saying. You can't really blame YouTube if things slip through once in a while. But the question comes, the year before Congress enacted Section 230, one court blurred this distinction between the distributors and the publishers. An early internet company was sued for failing to take down defamatory content posted by an unidentified commenter on a message board. Message boards were really big. The company contended that it merely distributed the defamatory statement, but the company had also held itself out as a family-friendly service provider that moderated and took down offensive content. The court determined that the company's decision to exercise editorial control over some content rendered it a publisher, even for content it merely distributed. So that particular case right there kind of set the, course for Section 230, really, because they were afraid that if all of these very young companies at the time would face this type of thing, and they would be afraid to have forums, then, if they had a forum, were they going to be sued for somebody saying something illegal or doing something illegal in there? It's definitely something that you would have to contend with, and it would really repress the types of forums that were developing. And so that's why they wanted to get it changed. But the problem was they really didn't change it very well, because at the time, 1996, things were quite different. And, it was such an immature internet at the time, and it's just developed in so many ways that they never could have imagined back then. This is one of the laws that I think, Justice Thomas here is saying really needs to be fixed. There are some problems with it. There need to be some amendments. Something needs to be clarified. Just different things in it. I thought it was kind of interesting discussion that he had here, and he did a good job on that. If you want to read the whole thing, I'll leave the link down below. It starts on page 12, is where his it's not really a dissent, it's his opinion on it, and it goes all the way to the end. So it's, a few pages there. And the last thing I want to just share with you is from, this is from 2 Timothy chapter 4. And I really think we need to remember this today, especially because it says, I charge thee before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing in his kingdom. Preach the word, be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. I got to tell you, just in case you're not a King James person and you don't quite get what that's being said here, preach the word. You've got to preach the truth. You've got to put the truth out there. And this is how I think it applies to us right now, especially with the events of the last couple days. We need to continue to put the truth out there. We really do. And, if you've seen my motto a zillion times, if you watched my videos, but seeking truth. We need to seek for truth, and then we need to discover the truth, and we need to reveal it to others. So, you seek for it, you go out, you actively look for it. You discover it, and then you reveal it to others. Very important to do, okay? All of it's very important. And it goes on, it says, be instant in season and out of season. Okay, that phrase right there, in case you don't know what that means, be instant in season, out of season. Have your argument all ready to go. Know why you believe what you believe. Okay? And be prepared to tell anyone at any time. Just be prepared. And then reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. Doctrine is more of the evidence, the facts. What is it we have? Well, we use the facts to reprove and rebuke, but also exhort and encourage people. So we're not only telling them the things that are going wrong, the bad things that are happening, but we're also giving them a positive message, because I think the exhortation is very important in all of this. Right now, people need to have some positivity. If we focus totally on negative things, it will do a damage to people inside. They really need encouragement right now. And this exhortation, give them a chance to hear the truth, but don't leave them in a depressed state, because there's hope. There's an important factor in this, that we are seeing progress, and we're going to see more justice done if we can just get this election settled. And if the Republicans are put in to all three branches, then yes, we will see some incredible things. And it's going to be very positive for our country. But it's going to be very difficult for a lot of people. So I want you to be prepared right now for knowing what you believe, knowing why you believe it, and also for being there for people for whichever they need. To be a little tough on them and tell them the truth, or to encourage them depending on whatever they are needing at the time. But have your evidence prepared. Know what you believe. Okay? And then it goes on to probably the verse that I really stood out to me today. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears. So we have a lot of people right now who have itching ears. They only want to hear what they want to hear. And that can be really kind of a dangerous thing. So we need to make sure that we're not just paying attention to something or believing it just because it's what we want to hear, but that we're actually going through and looking at it and looking at the evidence and making sure that it's tested and it's true. Okay? So, don't scratch your ears too much. But anyway, and they bring to themselves teachers. That's the thing. They bring in people that are going to tell them what they want to know. Think about like a lot of the mainstream media. They only bring people on who are going to say the things that they want to have said to their people, that they think their viewers are going to want to hear. So, I try when I'm going through my different videos to share not only things that I think you're going to want to hear, but also some things that you just need to hear. And you may not like hearing them, but it's important to know. So anyway, and then it goes on, it says, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth and shall be turned into fables. Yeah, sometimes it's just easier for people to believe the fables than it is the truth. But watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, which is kind of what we're going through right now. It's tough. Do the work of an evangelist. And, again, this is biblical, this is spiritual, but there's also a lesson to be learned. Be ready to go out and tell people the truth. Don't just sit back and wait for people to come to you and say, please tell me the truth, oh guru. We need to actually take the step to find people that need to hear the truth. And that's a spiritual truth as well as a political truth right now. Make full proof of thy ministry. So, yeah, if you have a way, if God has given you a place to be able to talk to people, a skill, like if you're going to write. I was looking at the Republican website for Indiana, and one of the things they said, can you write op-eds? Can you write like an opinion piece for the newspaper? So if we would get a bunch of people writing opinion pieces on various topics, it could really make a difference. And, when people are reading their hometown newspaper, it has articles in there or, opinion pieces. People are writing in saying, oh, why should we be concerned about General Flynn? Because if it could happen to him, it could happen to us. Why should we pay attention to what's going on with President Trump? Because again, if it happens to a president, what are they doing to us? So, we need to have our facts. We need to have our skills, whatever skill you have. You may not be able to write op-eds. That's fine. Find out what your skill is. Maybe it's talking to your neighbor across the street. Maybe it's just driving somebody to vote or helping them fill out their ballots or whatever the case is. Do what you can, whatever your skill set is, because all of us have unique skills and we need to put them to work right now to further things in our country. And obviously, from a Christian point of view, we need to always be doing that. But it's just very interesting. Now, I do want to point this out to you too, because, this was Paul writing, and he was in prison at the time, and he probably figured he didn't have much of his life left, that he wasn't going to ever be free again, at least not on this earth. And so he says, for I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. And he's talking about being executed. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing. So I want to encourage you all that it looks dark right now, okay? I understand, but there's a miracle coming right around the corner. And I really think that we just need to hang on for just a little bit longer because we're going to see some incredible things happen. And we need to give that hope to a lot of other people, because many people are in the dark. They know something's not right, but they just don't have any hope that it's ever going to change. So go out, give people hope, like the First Lady, just encourage people, and remember, with compassion and humility, please just present the evidence you have and let their minds do the work for you so they can think it through. And you get a lot further with people if you can just present the information, ask them questions. Instead of telling them, all this information, ask them questions. Why are there so many articles on a certain movement right now? Why are they so scared of it? Why are they taking down anyone who is connected with it? So just ask questions. Questions are great. They really do help people to think things through. And that's what we're all about, right? We're all about getting people to think, to find the evidence, to find the documentation, and then to think it through. So anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one, folks. And I want you to be encouraged. It's not the end. It's just part of the battle, okay? So thanks for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.